The city lights glittered like a spilled jewelry box beneath my apartment window, the glass cool against my bare arm. I pressed the phone tighter to my ear as my mother's voice drifted across 3 time zones, cheerful, almost casual. So while we were at the lake house, we decided it made sense for Hannah and the kids to use your old room. You can just stay on the pull-out when you come home. The words were light, harmless on the surface, but they landed in me like a stone dropped in deep water. Right, I said, because years of practice had trained my voice to stay steady. Hannah and the kids. Of course. My older sister, with her endless chaos, sticky fingers, and sippy cups, had always been the gravitational center of my parents' universe. A soft breeze curled in from the balcony, carrying the faint salt of the Atlantic. The silk of my blouse whispered against my skin as I shifted, catching my reflection in the darkened window. To anyone else, I looked perfectly composed. 29, a communications director with a corner office, gold hoops catching the city's neon. But inside, an old ache, part jealousy, part resignation, tightened like a fist. They still saw me as the spare, the one whose room could be handed over without a second thought. I ended the call with polite words and a smile my mother couldn't see, but my pulse hammered like a drum. The memory that rose first wasn't dramatic, no slammed doors, no cinematic thunderstorm. It was quieter, like most of the ways my family chose favorites. I was 17, perched on the back steps of our colonial-style house in Connecticut, the summer air heavy with the scent of cut grass and Hannah's perfume drifting from inside. My acceptance letter to Columbia lay folded in my lap, its blue crest glowing faintly in the dusk. Inside, laughter swirled around the dining table. Hannah had just announced she was pregnant. Unexpected, but everyone was giddy, my parents beaming like they'd been waiting their whole lives for this particular news. I pushed open the screen door, the creak giving me away. "Rachel," Mom said, turning with a smile that already belonged to someone else. "Isn't it wonderful? You're going to be an aunt." I smiled, because that was my role. The quiet one. The dependable one.
"Yeah."
"That's amazing." My voice wavered, but no one noticed. I held up the letter. "I got into Columbia." Dad glanced at the envelope, then back to Hannah, who was holding court, her cheeks flushed with excitement. "That's great, honey," he said, his attention already drifting back to the glowing mother-to-be. The lump in my throat tasted like pennies. I nodded and slid the letter behind my back, the paper crinkling like a small, private heartbreak. Later that night, I sat cross-legged on my bed, the moon spilling silver across the comforter. I turned the letter over and over, as if the weight of it could anchor me against the current of their indifference. That's when my grandmother, Dad's mother, the quiet force everyone underestimated, tapped on my door. She carried a small, worn leather journal, edges softened by decades of hands. "I heard," she said simply, sitting beside me. Her eyes, pale as sea glass, held mine. "They love you, Rachel. But sometimes people only know how to celebrate what they understand. Don't let their limits shrink you." She pressed the journal into my hands. "Write what matters. Write your own story before they write it for you." Her words slid into me like a key finding its lock. That night, I opened the journal and wrote my first line. "I will not disappear." It wasn't a dramatic rebellion. No running away or fiery arguments. But it was the night I decided my worth wouldn't be measured in their applause. It was the quiet vow that would drive every step I took after that. The journal never left my side. It lived in the bottom of every bag I carried through those restless years, its worn leather edges softening like a talisman. Columbia was a baptism by fire. Manhattan roared around me like a living thing, all sirens and steam vents, and the smell of roasted chestnuts in winter. At first the noise drowned out my own voice. I was the girl from a small Connecticut town, trying not to look overwhelmed as professors spoke in a language of theories and deadlines. Some nights I'd collapse onto the narrow dorm mattress, my hands cramped from note-taking, my eyes burning from late-night study sessions. Doubt crept in like an unwelcome draft. Maybe Hannah was right to stay close to home, to build a life everyone instantly celebrated. But each time that thought flickered, I opened the journal. I filled page after page with fragments of lectures, overheard subway conversations, tiny victories, like the first time a professor quoted my essay in class. The pages reminded me who I wanted to be, a storyteller with a voice that demanded to be heard. During my second year, I landed an internship at a midtown media firm, a stroke of luck that felt almost fated. My supervisor, Margaret Ellis, was a legend, silver hair cropped close, eyes sharp as winter sunlight. She spotted my nervous energy in an instant. "You take notes like you're writing a novel," she said after our first pitch meeting, a crooked grin softening her face. "Good. Stories sell. Don't lose that." Under Margaret's wing, I learned more than I ever had in classrooms. She taught me how to distill chaos into clarity, how to craft a message that could bend public opinion. When my internship ended, she offered me a full-time position. "People will underestimate you," she warned one late evening as we packed up. "Let them. Surprise is your sharpest tool." Her faith in me burned hotter than any doubt. I said yes. The next years blurred into long nights and bottomless coffee cups. I worked through holidays, took on projects no one else wanted, and pitched bold campaigns that startled boardrooms into silence. I stumbled, too, botched a client presentation so badly I thought my career might end before it began. But each setback fed a quiet, stubborn fire. By 27, I was leading campaigns that shaped national conversations. A rival firm tried to poach me. Instead, Margaret and I founded our own boutique agency. Within 18 months, we landed 2 Fortune 500 clients and a glossy magazine cover that called us the city's quiet power duo. Through it all, my family received only the vaguest updates. "Work's busy," or "Things are going well." I skipped Christmas twice, claiming deadlines. When I did visit, I listened to Hannah's stories about school runs and soccer practice, smiling politely while keeping my own triumphs folded away like a secret. I wasn't hiding out of spite. I was protecting something fragile and hard-won, proof that my worth didn't need their validation. And still, tucked in the drawer of my sleek new office desk, the old leather journal waited. The first page, "I will not disappear," had become less a vow and more a quiet, unshakable truth. The family vacation ended with a single text: "We're home. When can you visit? The kids are already loving your room." I stared at the glowing screen, the city skyline winking beyond my glass balcony doors. The words should have rolled off me by now, but a pulse of old hurt flared sharp as ever. 2 days later, I booked a flight. Not because I needed their approval, God, no, but because silence had become too easy. And because some truths deserved to be spoken aloud. I arrived on a crisp Saturday afternoon, Connecticut draped in the first scarfs of autumn. The familiar clapboard house stood exactly as it always had, white paint gleaming like it had been scrubbed of time. My father opened the door with a surprised lift of his brows. "Rachel? We didn't expect." "Figured I'd drop in," I said, stepping past him. The scent of cinnamon and furniture polish wrapped around me, a rush of childhood memories that felt both distant and intimate. My mother emerged from the kitchen, flour dusting her hands. Her smile was warm, if a touch guilty. "Your room looks wonderful," she said too quickly. "The kids, well, you'll see." I followed her upstairs. My old door now bore a crooked construction paper sign, Aunt Rachel's room scribbled in Hannah's daughter's handwriting. Inside, the walls once covered in my college posters were now plastered with cartoon decals. My old desk, where I had once written the first pages of that leather journal, was gone, replaced by a plastic toy chest. Something in me settled, not anger, exactly, but a clarity I hadn't expected. Downstairs, Hannah bustled in with her 2 children, cheeks flushed from the chilly air.
She froze when she saw me. "Ratch.
"Didn't know you were coming." I smiled, steady. Surprise. The living room filled quickly with the scent of cocoa and the hum of small talk. Finally, when the children wandered off to play, silence stretched like a held breath. "I have something to share," I said. My voice carried more weight than I intended. "I'm not here for a bed." I'm here because you've never really asked what I've been doing all these years. My mother's brow furrowed. Dad leaned forward. I reached into my bag and pulled out a crisp copy of Business Insight magazine. Across the glossy cover, a photo of Margaret and me, shoulder to shoulder beneath the headline, "The Quiet Architects of Influence." "That's you?" Hannah whispered. I nodded. Margaret and I run our own media strategy firm. We handle national campaigns, political messaging, Fortune 500 accounts. Last year, we closed our third multi-million-dollar contract. The room went very still. I own half the agency, I added, my tone gentle but unflinching. And this, I tapped the magazine, is just the beginning. Mom's mouth parted, words caught somewhere between pride and disbelief. Dad's eyes softened first, his usual certainty cracked by awe. Hannah blinked, cheeks pink. I had no idea. No one did, I said. I kept it quiet because I needed to prove, to myself more than anyone, that I could build something without applause. I let the silence do its work. They took in the tailored coat on my shoulders, the understated gold watch, the easy confidence I carried like second skin. I don't need my old room, I said finally. I came to tell you that. And to show you who I really am, whether or not you were ready to see it. For the first time in years, their gaze met mine not with dismissal or distracted affection, but with something new, recognition. The quiet stretched until the old clock above the mantel clicked loudly, marking every second they spent trying to catch up with the woman sitting across from them. Mom was the first to speak. "Rachel, honey, we're proud of you. We've always been proud." I tilted my head, a soft smile touching my lips. I appreciate that. But pride is easy when you only see the parts that match your expectations. Dad shifted in his chair. "We never meant to." "I know," I interrupted gently. "This isn't about blame. It's about what comes next." They blinked, and for once they waited, really waited, for me to continue. "I want a relationship with all of you," I said, looking from Mom to Dad, then to Hannah. "But it has to be different. No more measuring me against the family script. No more assuming my life is less because it doesn't look like Hannah's." And I drew a breath, steady and deliberate. No more casual dismissals. Even small ones hurt more than you think. Hannah's eyes dropped to her clasped hands. "I didn't realize." "I know you didn't." I reached out and squeezed her fingers, a quiet bridge of understanding. "But we can do better. Together." I turned to my parents. "I want family dinners where everyone is curious about each other's lives. I want us to celebrate different kinds of success without ranking them. And I need honesty. If you're worried or don't understand my choices, say so. Don't brush them aside." Dad exhaled, shoulders slumping as though a weight had been shifted from him. "We can do that." "We will." Mom nodded, eyes glistening. "I'm sorry, Rachel. We should have listened more." I leaned back, the leather of the sofa cool against my palms.
Good.
Because I'd like the kids to know me not just as the aunt with gifts at Christmas, but as someone who built something meaningful. I want them to see that there are many ways to build a life worth celebrating. Hannah squeezed my hand in return. I'd like that too. The power in the room had shifted, quietly, without force. It wasn't about revenge or proving them wrong. It was about rewriting how we existed together. "Then that's our starting point," I said. "Mutual respect. No more disappearing acts on either side." Dad chuckled softly, almost in relief.
Deal.
Mom reached over to cover my hand with hers.
Deal.
The old ache inside me eased, like a muscle finally unclenching after years of tension. I hadn't come home to reclaim a bedroom. I'd come home to set new terms for the people I loved and for myself. Outside, the late afternoon sun spilled through the bay window, turning the room a molten gold. For the first time in years, it felt like we were all finally seeing each other in the same light. The weekend unfolded with a gentleness I hadn't expected. Sunday morning found me in the backyard, steam rising from my coffee as the maples scattered red leaves across the grass. Hannah's kids darted through the crisp air, their laughter spilling like bells. Mom joined me on the porch swing, a knit shawl wrapped around her shoulders. For a while we just listened, to the wind in the trees, to the children's squeals, to the house settling behind us. "I keep thinking about what you said yesterday," she began quietly. "How small things can hurt, without us realizing." "I'm sorry, Rachel. I should have seen it sooner." I watched a leaf spiral down, catching the morning sun like a tiny flame. "I know you didn't mean harm," I said. "But knowing that doesn't erase the ache. What matters is what we do now." Mom's eyes softened, a hint of pride mingling with regret. "Then let's do better. Together." Inside, Hannah knelt beside her kids, patiently helping them build a wobbling block tower. When she looked up, our eyes met. She mouthed a simple thank you. I nodded, the old rivalry finally loosening its grip. Later, before heading back to the city, I slipped upstairs one last time. My old room, now bright with cartoon decals, no longer felt like a loss. It had become something else. Proof that life keeps moving, that spaces can transform and still hold the echoes of who we were. I pulled the leather journal from my bag and set it on the small toy chest. The cover was more worn now, the first page still bearing the words I'd written at 17. "I will not disappear." For years, those words had been my secret armor. Now, they felt like a gift I could leave behind, a quiet legacy for the next generation, an invitation to stand tall, to claim space, to be heard. Back downstairs, hugs lingered longer than usual. Dad squeezed my shoulder, a silent promise in the gesture. Driving away, the late afternoon sun spilled gold across the winding road, and for the first time in a long time, the weight I carried wasn't loneliness, but something steadier, something earned. I didn't need my childhood room. I had built a life no one could give or take away. And at last, my family could see me exactly as I was. Whole, present, and impossible to overlook.